Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me on whatever this is, hopefully the start of many episodes. My name is Carmen. I'm a real estate agent here in beautiful Whistler, British Columbia. And I will work on the name of this, maybe get some theme music. That would be great. But today's a day we've been waiting for a couple of months. So I think we'll just dive right in. We've had three interest rate announcements so far in 2024. And the last one was early April. And I feel like a lot of people in our industry, a lot of people who are thinking about buying have kind of been waiting for today. Joining me today is Karen Garrett. Karen, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Karen Garrett, and I'm with Sea to Sky Mortgages. I've been a mortgage broker for 25 years in Whistler. And prior to that, I worked at the Royal Bank when we first opened the Royal Bank in 91 in Whistler. So I've been up here a long time.
Okay, what brought you here in the first
Um,
place?
Actually, I grew up from grade five on from Squamish. So when I
Oh,
worked at the Royal Bank in Squamish, and then when the opportunity came to open up the branch in Whistler, not me personally, but to come up as part of the expansion, I moved up here.
thank you for joining me, and especially because I know you are fresh off a flight, probably not sure which end is up, but your first message to me this morning was quite excited. So why don't we dive into that? The first thing I want to know, though, could you give us a Bank of Canada for Dummies rundown of who they are, what they do, why they get to make these big decisions, and maybe how they come to that conclusion?
Yes, I will answer that question as easily as I can for everyone to sort of understand. And honestly, it's how I understand it. So the Bank of Canada is comprised of Tiff Macklin, who is the governor, and then there are 13 other appointed members. They meet 8 times a year on designated, appointed, preset dates every annual year. And at that time, they assess the economy. They use the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, to determine how inflation is being registered, but it's a bit lagging. So right now we are dealing with April's Consumer Price Index information, which is 2.7. The target rate is 2%. So we've been watching that steadily come down, but not come down as quickly as we expected it to. So that's one of the markers that the Bank of Canada considers. And the other one is I'm going to get all tongue tied here, the GDP, of course, which is the gross domestic product. So that one annualizes what's happening with the economy. The biggest difference is because they're both very similar in their indicators of how they come to their numbers every time that they assess their figures. The GDP assesses on domestic and foreign products in and out of Canada, where the CPI only assesses household spending and only domestically. So the CPI will take things into consideration like housing, um, uh, food, accommodation, furniture, cars, all the general spending of a household. And the GDP will take into consideration that and then anything that affects us internationally as a country. The GDP will assess it once a year generally, and the CPI is every month. So, with those two things in mind, and probably a lot more, they're very smart people in that board. They then determine where inflation is going projectively and where we need to have interest rates, whether we need to raise them to slow down spending and slow down the economy, or whether they need to reduce them so that we can increase spending, encourage spending, or start to put more money back in your pocket. So the today's announcement, yay,
Yes.
was that the Bank of Canada decided they were going to lower the rate by a quarter point, which is the first time this year, and in fact the first time in almost a year that they've moved
Okay.
the target rate. And they actually haven't reduced rates for 4 years. So it's
That's
kind of
pretty
a nice,
significant.
it's very significant. Yes.
Yeah. So was that what you expected? Because I feel like the last one they held steady. Obviously, they haven't reduced it in 4 years, but people have been waiting and waiting for this. So was this what you expected today?
Yes, but it actually came, it's been lagging. So for instance, we were told back in fall of 2023 from our economists that we trust that we were expecting rates to start coming down very early into 2020
Mm.
But what happened is there were some spikes in unemployment rates reduced. So then new employment numbers came out, more spending. And I feel like it's kind of an interesting time for where we determine these rates. So normal indicators, once people stop spending, then we start to see inflation drop. And then because of that, we start to see reduction in rates. Whereas we're kind of in a perfect storm post-pandemic. And what's happened is, as you may know, interest rates for some people are very low and are still another year and a half to 2 years for lower rates. Whereas some people's mortgages either timing to buy now or have had renewals that are coming up in this last year to 2 years, their interest rates are significantly higher. But what's happened is there's a large portion of the interest rate mortgage holders that their mortgages aren't renewing for another 2 years. So their interest rates can be as low as 1.89, 1.59. So because of that, they've not been affected by these high rates as much as the general sense that the indicators would show that with spending and costs of goods and unemployment down and wages higher, you would have thought those numbers would have been affected quicker, but they haven't, simply because there are a large portion of people who aren't really adjusting their lifestyles yet because their spending habits aren't being affected by the major portion of their costs every month, which is their mortgage. So
Right.
interesting that it's kind of an odd time. The other side of it that's affected us recently is that the unemployment numbers were down in April. There was 90,000 new jobs in April, which kind of brought the numbers a little bit higher than they were expecting. And the simple reason for that is that there is a large percentage of Canadian population that is maturing to the point they're pensioning out. And because of that, the workforce that's coming up to refill those spots, they are trying to replace a 30 or a 25-year tenured person. And so it's taking two people to fill that same role. So there are a lot more part-time jobs. And so because of that, wages are costing more for the employer, simply because they have to replace it with two people for that same job. And then the other thing that's happened is, you well know now, that there are a lot of people demanding more money for their employment. And so those two things also played into the last 6 to 8 months. So to answer you long-windedly, we were expecting rates to come down, but it hasn't come down as quickly as we expected. And these little lagging indicators keep holding us back. And we
Okay.
are expecting some more rate drops within 2024. The thought was, once the dam opened, we were going to see the next 4 meetings, which are the final meetings of 2024. In all cases, the rates will come down, but I'm not so sure now if it'll be every one, but we are expecting some
Right.
more rate drops in 2024.
So I guess that leads to my next question. We in this industry have so many clients waiting to buy. They want to buy a house, but they're waiting and waiting because everybody keeps saying interest rates will come down. You got to wait. What's your advice on that? You're talking about the next few. So we've got 4 more this year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What would your advice be to somebody who's been waiting and now we see a drop?
Well, it's a fine balance. As you guys probably more so deal with the offset of the question of interest rates, is as interest rates come down, and has been one of the biggest holders back of the Bank of Canada reducing rates, is that housing is such an issue in Canada. And the problem can be that if they lower rates and just jumpstart the spending of buying homes, we're going to be in a spiral of more expensive houses very quickly. So what I think will happen is, for anybody who's looking to buy now, you've got to balance out between where your housing is currently, and are you coming up for a lease, or are you needing to move? Are you looking to move? Is the property that you love right now available? Because if it is, you're not going to save that much in the sense of interest rates in the future, simply because prices are going to potentially rise. By 2026, they say prices are going to go up again.
Oh,
Housing prices will increase. So because of that, I think there's a real fine balance. And I always tell my buyers, maybe the easiest thing to do is to have a longer closing, so then you can hedge what's going to happen in the next 6 to 2 months, rather than have a quick close in June, say, have a longer closing, but start making your contracts now so
Right.
that you kind of can benefit from both worlds. You can tie in your purchase at this rate, at this purchase price, and then see what happens, because we can always improve rates along the way prior to your closing of your mortgage. Now, one of the key things that is a bit of a misnomer is that when the Bank of Canada lowers rates, as they have done today, and several clients have already reached out to me and said, "What are my fixed rates doing today?" Immediately, the only effect is the variable rates, because they're
Yeah.
obviously affected by the change today. And in some cases, the change doesn't even happen till the following first of the next month. Your bank, you check with your bank to see which way that happens for you.
Okay.
But for a fixed rate, we're affected by the bond market. So today the bond market is down and was down yesterday. But typically, the bond market doesn't always work in concert with the Bank of Canada's decisions. So although we're seeing some reductions, a quarter point in rates today, that doesn't mean your fixed rates have dropped a quarter point and we're going to see some announcements. It means indicators are that we're heading in that direction. So the idea would be, Carman, I think, would be to make a contract now if you find the house that suits you for all the right boxes that are ticked,
Right.
and then put a longer closing.
Because there's one more announcement late July. And then is
Yeah,
the one
July
after that
24th.
September?
September, and then it's October,
Okay.
and then early December.
So
Yeah,
September could be a bit of a long close, but July for sure you could wait for that. Okay, that's a great tip.
exactly.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about, you've actually already touched on, but I am personally in this position and I know a lot of other people are, is that my mortgage is currently 2.89 and I'm up in August. This has obviously been a
Yeah.
huge concern over the past 6 months, but now I feel not that I can breathe easy, but it's not going to be 7, right? So that feels a little bit better. What's your advice on
Mm-hmm.
that front? Like, what steps should I take? What can I expect coming up in the next 2 months before I renew?
If you are going with the variable, then obviously you'll already have that change. But if you're going to go with a fixed rate, then I would definitely not early renew with your bank. So what happens is, even as far out as 6 months from your renewal date, your current lender should be contacting you to say,
They
"Hey,
did.
you can forego any penalties and
Mm.
lock in now." But I have absolutely recommended clients for the last year not to take advantage of that. In the past, certainly in 2022, when that was happening, I was saying to clients, jump on this rate, because in 6 months you won't have this rate. And we, as a mortgage broker in the mortgage industry or competitive banks, we can only hold rates for 120 days. Whereas the lenders that have your mortgage currently can tie you in 6 months out. But as the for your question, Carman, I would recommend that you don't lock in right now. And what you
Okay.
would expect to see is probably we're definitely going to be sub 5% for interest rates for you. Weather will be sub 4. I think that's aggressive. My prediction would be probably mid 4s by the time we go to
Okay.
renew by October for you, I would
It's
suspect. And then it
August.
depends on the term. Oh, August, pardon me.
August. Yeah.
Then it
Yeah.
may not be, yeah, I think you'll be probably the 4.75 or 4.65, somewhere in there. I don't think we're going to see major reduction because we got one more rate announcement. But of course, if the next announcement drops, then that may be the beginning of the ball bouncing downhill.
Mm.
And because of that, we probably will see some more confidence in rates reducing. And because of that, we'll start to see the Bank of Canada adjust rates, and then the bond market react positively for that.
Okay. You mentioned you've already had some calls from clients. So can we anticipate seeing a swing now again of listings or purchases that have been a bit slow recently?
I, I would think that, Carman, actually,
Mm.
even when the Bank of Canada didn't increase the rates back in July of last year, and they stayed steady for almost for steadfast for the almost the last year, we've seen more clients looking to buy relative to the year before at the same period
Mm.
of time. And I'm sure you could probably attest to that, that the market is better this year at this time than it was this time last year. So I
Yeah.
feel that now this announcement is going to put other people in that mindset of, let's go look again, let's start to renew our process. We are seeing that a lot more. I'm getting more clients reaching out again where I've maybe had them go dormant for 6 months or so.
Right. Is there anything else that you want to touch on or?
One thing that was interesting, actually, in February, I met the former Bank of Canada governor, Stephen Politz, and I managed to have a few minutes with him, which was really special. And one of the things he said was that anything that happens today can take up to 2 years to actually funnel into the economy.
Mm,
So events that are happening, our inflation numbers in April were really from 2 years ago's actions from the bank. And so this can take a little while. It's a trickle effect. It's
right.
not going to happen overnight. We're not going to see a steady decrease or a steady increase, but I think it's a good indicator of where things to come.
Amazing. Thank you. So will you join me again on July 24th? We'll talk about the next one.
I would love it. Thank
Okay,
you.
that sounds great. I'll make sure your information is below to anybody watching. If you have questions about mortgages and mortgage rates, call Karen or maybe email for a little bit, give her a chance to readjust to BC time. But thank you so much for
Thanks,
joining
Carmen.
me. Have a great day. We'll
Thank
talk
you
to
for
you
having
later.
me.